Brought to you by Thomas Allgaier and Frennis. This edition highlights key LinkedIn posts on future mobility and market evolution in weeks 15 and 16. Frennis supports Tier 1 automotive suppliers with early-stage market validation for their R&D efforts by combining secondary research, direct OEM expert interviews, and facilitated customer meetings. You'd find more info in the description.
Yeah, and welcome everyone to today's deep dive. If you're a professional navigating this incredibly fast-moving mobility space, you are in the right place.
Exactly. We are essentially giving you a custom executive briefing. We've gone through all the noise on LinkedIn from calendar weeks 15 and 16, and we've pulled out the absolute top trends.
Right. The stuff you actually need to know about where future mobility is heading. And we've grouped these insights into three main themes for you today.
Yeah, so we're going to cover scaled autonomous mobility and AV ecosystems first. Then we'll get into micromobility and shared mobility reinvention. And finally, we'll wrap up with integrated urban mobility and public transport linkages.
It's a lot of ground, but the overarching narrative connecting all of this is that the industry is rapidly moving out of the shiny technology experiment phase.
Oh, completely. It's not sci-fi anymore.
No, not at all. It's colliding head-on with brutal operational economics. It's about unit economics at scale now. So let's jump right into that first theme. Scaled autonomous mobility.
Yeah, let's do it, because I was reading Steve Greenfield's recent post, and it is just staggering. He highlighted that Uber is committing something like $10 billion to autonomous vehicles.
Wow. $10 billion.
Right. And they aren't just doing light partnerships anymore. They're buying thousands of AVs, taking equity stakes in developers. It's a massive pivot away from their whole asset-light gig economy model.
Well, they're doing it to avoid being disrupted, right? And Peter H. Diamandis actually provided some brilliant context on this dynamic.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
So he was arguing that Uber's CEO, Dara Khosrowshahi, is making this really calculated bet. He assumes that owning the passenger demand, like the actual consumer interface and routing logistics, is going to matter way more than who manufactures the AI stack.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. By 2029, Uber projects they'll facilitate more autonomous rides than anyone else. They're basically treating the whole AV industry as just a roster of suppliers for their platform.
Which is exactly what we're seeing on the hardware side. Mark Winterhoff and Silvio Napoli were both sharing updates on LinkedIn about Lucid Motors deeply expanding its Uber partnership.
Right, the new fleet deal.
Exactly. We're talking up to 35,000 purpose-built Robotaxi vehicles, backed by a $1 billion capital raise. Lucid is heavily engineering their vehicles specifically for fleet efficiency. So, wait, trying to wrap my head around this. Is Uber basically trying to become the Booking.com of autonomous fleets? Well, Lucid just provides the hotel rooms.
That's a perfect analogy for the demand-side strategy. But the reality on the ground is a lot grittier than just listing rooms. Winning the Robotaxi war isn't just about having the smartest AI anymore.
It's the operations, right?
Precisely. Kieran White and Sanjana R. both broke this down. Sanjana made a fascinating point. When you scale a fleet to 10,000 vehicles, edge cases stop being rare.
Because of the sheer volume of miles.
Exactly. Construction zones, erratic pedestrians, at 10,000 cars, those edge cases happen before lunch every single day. So the winner is whoever builds the best operational triage.
Yeah, and Kieran White argued that ride-hailing is historically won on price. But once you remove the human driver's wage, the battlefield shifts entirely to utilization rates and obsessive cost optimization.
Which brings up the math Jigar Shah posted about.
Yes. I found this mind-blowing. He quantified those granular costs. He noted that if you reduce a Robotaxi's battery size by just 1 kilowatt-hour, you save the operator $1,000 a year in recharging costs.
$1,000 per car.
Per car. Assuming it runs about 100,000 miles a year. So when you multiply that by tens of thousands of cars, shedding just a few pounds of battery weight becomes a board-level priority.
Because a smaller battery means less weight, better efficiency, and more revenue-generating time on the road.
Exactly.
But, optimizing the battery exposes other hidden bottlenecks, like data logistics. Nicolas Savage detailed this massive problem that emerges at scale.
Data offloading, right?
Yeah. A Robotaxi gathers terabytes of video and LiDAR data all day. When it returns to the depot, it has to offload all of that to train the next iteration of the AI. You can't just plug in standard cables when 1,000 cars return at once. You need ultra-fast wireless infrastructure.
Right, because if physical cables are your bottlenecks, your AI learns slower than your competitors.
Yeah.
It's crazy how physical these digital problems become.
Absolutely.
And speaking of bottlenecks, there's the insurance side. Jeff Cavins announced that Romley is offering per-mile FSD, that's full self-driving insurance, at just 31 cents per active mile.
Which is a massive unlock.
Huge. Traditional commercial fleet insurance assumes human error and charges this flat, fixed premium. By turning it into a variable cost, fleet operators only pay for the risk exposure while the car is actually moving and generating fares.
It completely changes the financial model. And, it's interesting to look globally at how different regions are actually putting these vehicles on the street. It's like a global laboratory.
Oh, for sure. Urvashi Mistry observed Dubai deploying 100 Apollo robotaxis. And their approach is so systematic, they're actively using AVs to engineer structural risk out of the transport system. They just want human variables removed entirely.
Meanwhile, Europe is operating under a totally different kind of pressure. Daniel Abreu Marquez provided a really impartial breakdown of the Verne Robotaxi launch in Zagreb.
Yeah, the EU grant situation.
Right. They had this intense deadline to secure a €179.5 million grant. To meet that funding window, Verne actually launched using Chinese vehicles from Pony.ai running on a US-based Uber platform. Yeah, it highlights this real tension in Europe between massive funding ambitions and maybe lacking the immediate readiness of homegrown tech.
And then you have the US, which is just tangled in regulatory definitions. Gabriel Seiberth and Harry Campbell were discussing Tesla's Robotaxi system in California.
The level 2 versus level 4 debate?
Exactly. Tesla currently operates under a standard limousine permit. Regulators classify their tech as level 2 driver assistance, meaning a human is ultimately responsible. By keeping that L2 classification, they are exempt from the super strict autonomous safety reporting that L4 companies like Waymo have to submit.
It's entirely a semantic regulatory standoff.
It really is. But then, on the flip side, Johanna Gaussen-Halsby shared an update from Stavanger, Norway. They quietly launched Europe's first level 4 autonomous bus in live traffic. No safety driver on board at all, just true autonomy in the wild.
The variance in maturity across regions is just stark. But this whole focus on surviving through operational efficiency, it isn't just unique to AVs. It brings us perfectly to our second theme, micromobility and shared mobility reinvention.
Right. The exact same shift from VC hype to ruthless discipline has hit the scooter and bike sectors.
Totally. Prabinjal Jones shared a great interview with Candice C., the CEO of VO, and they did something really impressive. They only raised about $16 million, which is nothing in the scooter world, but they had $50 million in revenue and became EBIT positive.
EBIT positive, meaning they're fundamentally profitable.
Right. Earnings before interest and taxes are in the black, and they did it by abandoning the whole growth at all costs mentality, kept operations in-house, obsessed over ridership, and made 1% daily operational improvements.
But wait, I got to push back here a bit. When I look at my LinkedIn feed, the dominant headlines are always about cities regulating scooters out of existence.
Yeah.
Paris banned rental scooters entirely. How is this a maturing market if cities are shutting them down?
Yeah, that's a super common read on the situation, but Darius Skirtu offered a really compelling counter perspective. Strict regulations actually serve as a market catalyst.
How?
Well, the early Wild West days damaged public trust. When cities enforce strict technical requirements or cap fleet numbers, it forces operators to prove their reliability. And the smart operators don't die, they pivot.
Okay, yeah, Lars Christian Grudem-Olsen highlighted exactly that with the Paris situation. When Paris banned the e-scooters, operators like Dot, Lime, and Voy didn't abandon the city, they just pivoted to e-bikes.
Exactly.
And within a year, Paris issued contracts for 18,000 shared e-bikes. Dockless e-bike trips jumped 57%. So e-bikes basically became the path of least regulatory resistance.
And the hardware is evolving to protect the new profit margins from those e-bikes. Eric Jewell noted that DOT is rolling out 45,000 new vehicles with double the battery capacity.
Double the capacity. That's huge for operations.
Right. If the battery lasts twice as long, you dispatch your vans half as often to swap them out. Less labor, less fuel. It's a massive drop in operating costs.
Arini Zaferatu also shared that the new Bolt 7 e-scooter is engineered for an insane 8-year lifespan. Plus, it has AI parking capabilities to make sure users leave them upright. But it's not just hardware. Bojan Djukic posted this fascinating analysis on pricing psychology.
Oh, the mental accounting stuff.
Yes, he pointed out that dynamic per-minute pricing, which the whole industry started with, ignores how humans actually think. Users subconsciously hate an open-ended meter. If you hit a red light, you feel like you're losing money.
It creates anxiety.
Exactly. Jukic argued that offering fixed pricing packages like 30 minutes for a flat €1 rate dramatically outperforms dynamic rates. The user evaluates the financial commitment before unlocking the bike.
It completely removes the friction of the unknown. But, even with better pricing and hardware, keeping these fleets running takes a massive invisible backstage effort. Remy Kay pointed out the relentless street-level repositioning required in places like London.
Just to keep the footprint from dissolving into chaos.
Right. They're constantly balancing bikes between residential areas and transit hubs, which ties directly into the safety and public perception concerns. Khaled Chowdhury reported that Mississauga is considering suspending its e-scooter program entirely due to rising ER visits and police enforcement challenges.
But if you zoom out, the macro data is actually surprisingly positive. Maggie Gerbeau and Andrew Savage unpack the Micromobility for Europe report. They found that despite a 72% increase in e-bike trips, the injury rates per million trips actually dropped by 18%.
Wow, 18% drop.
Yeah. So better vehicle tech and better city infrastructure are actually working, and operators are getting smarter about user behavior too. Benas Gerlovas shared how Bolt uses a riding score. Instead of just banning bad users, they actively reward safe riding and proper parking with in-app perks.
Gamifying civic responsibility, that's brilliant, and it perfectly sets up our final theme today, integrated urban mobility. Because whether it's an 8-year lifespan scooter or a purpose-built Lucid Robotaxi, they all have to compete for the exact same physical space.
The battle for the curb.
Yes, the ultimate constraint.
Matteo Forte brought this to life. He posted about New York City creating a dedicated office of curb management. Every shared mobility operator, delivery fleet, and ride-hail car is fighting for the same 2 meters of asphalt.
It's incredibly competitive.
So, is the physical curb essentially becoming a dynamic digital stock market for space allocation?
It really has to function that way. Mobility can't be siloed anymore. And a big part of that is integrating with existing public transit. David Powell highlighted how Chicago is integrating its Divvy bike share system directly with the Venture Transit Pass.
So they're treated as one connected system.
Exactly. And Robin Tyne was advocating for similar integration in Scotland between Voice bike sharing and ScotRail. Lydia Senor and Ana Belén Fernandez Lorente noted that tightly combining transit with shared mobility could actually boost overall ridership by up to 7%.
But true integration is also digital and energetic.
Right.
Stefano De Lorenzo shared an update about iRide, partnering with Hubject in Switzerland. They seamlessly integrated 15,000 EV charging points into a single multimodal flow.
Right.
Wait, what does that actually look like for the user?
So instead of opening one app for a bike, another for the train schedule, and a third to find an EV charger, it's all unified. It connects energy access directly to public transport and shared mobility in one seamless interface.
That massively reduces friction, and it solves real human problems. Pietro Peyron highlighted that 7 million people in Italy are vulnerable to transport poverty. Shared mobility platforms generate this dense layer of data origins, destinations, frequencies. Cities can use that data to map and solve those access gaps.
That data is invaluable, but spatial challenges definitely remain. Robert Joseph Martin shared field research from Oslo showing that train station bike parking is becoming completely overwhelmed by the sheer size of modern e-bikes. He called it autobesity, hitting the bike lanes.
Autobesity, that's a perfect term.
Yeah.
The infrastructure built for lightweight pedal bikes just can't handle hundreds of 30-kilo electric utility bikes.
Yes.
And the final boss of all this dense urban integration has to be logistics.
Oh, absolutely.
John McClimate posted about DoorDash and also partnering on purpose-built autonomous delivery EVs. They realize they can't just put self-driving software into a standard sedan. They have to build vehicles structurally designed to handle rapid curb access and navigate narrow historic streets without killing last-mile productivity.
And that specific point about vehicles interacting with city infrastructure, it raises a much broader question that pulls all our themes together. So Mike Landau and Nathan Cabetti reported that Waymo and Waze are partnering to use robotaxis to crowdsource real-time pothole detection.
Oh, wow.
Right. So here's a paradigm shift to leave you with. If autonomous fleets are constantly mapping our decaying roads and finding potholes better than the government can, will mobility companies eventually evolve past just moving people?
That's a crazy thought.
Will they become the primary data brokers for urban planning and city maintenance?
A sci-fi movie colliding with a municipal spreadsheet right there on the curb. It really changes how you look at the vehicles outside your window. If you enjoyed this episode, new episodes drop every 2 weeks. Also check out our other editions on electrification and battery technology, next-gen vehicle intelligence, and commercial fleet insights.
Thanks so much for joining us on The Curb today, and don't forget to subscribe.